Kia ora, talofa, hi and welcome to episode 7 of Tanarumanga's Team Talk, proudly sponsored by McHugh, New Zealand's first health and wellbeing supplement that combines ancient Māori and Pacifica wisdom and ingredients. And my guest on the show today's rugby achievements are pretty incredible. When I was doing the research, it took me a while to actually note down everything that he's done in his life, and he's still a young man. So my guest today, he debuted for Leinster in 2005 and played for 15 seasons, winning multiple Celtic League championships and Heineken Cups. He played 95 tests for Ireland, that includes 2 Grand Slams, and was part of the first ever win against New Zealand. I had to mention that. I was there in the crowd.
It was a good day.
Went on 2 British and Irish Lions tours to South Africa and Australia, and then had a stint with the Western Force, who are based in Perth. That's when the last time we caught up. And then just on the back end of that, played some Gaelic football for Louth when you got home, and then decided to retire after that. So it's an honour and a privilege to have on my show Rob Kearney. How are you, brother?
Oh, I'm really good, mate, and thanks for having me on your show. Always a true idol of the game and someone I admired massively. So thank you for having me on.
No, I appreciate that. So, as I said, some incredible achievements there. But I just want to, how did you enjoy Perth? It's a little bit different from Dublin, weather-wise.
It's very different. Honestly, I had the most amazing experience. I was 16 years with Leinster and in Dublin, and very much sort of in a secluded area of a city. I'd never really, of course, I've been on tours outside of Ireland and, been to New Zealand countless times, Australia, South Africa, Argentina. But to go away to a new environment, a new club, the climate was incredible. And it was, for me, it was the most perfect way to finish up my career.
And what brought that want to go and play in Super Rugby? Because I know your name came up even with my time at the Blues. We were looking for a fullback, and then we had heard that you just signed with the Force when we found out that you were looking, and we missed out.
Oh, I wouldn't say missed out. I think so. I finished up with Leinster, and there was very much still a small appetite to continue playing, and I'd sort of been looking around the world to try and find a few clubs or places that I might try and go and play some rugby somewhere else, and Perth came up quite late in the day, and it was just a perfect fit. I wanted to go somewhere, obviously, where the lifestyle was going to be pretty attractive, and somewhere that was still going to challenge myself. I loved Super Rugby growing up. It was the most amazing rugby tournament. And, if you had told me that at 35 years of age, I would have been debuting in Super Rugby competition, I would have told you you're stonewall crazy. But it's amazing how you go through these different journeys in life, and to have been able to experience 6 months of Super Rugby, like I say, and finish my career in Eden Park against you boys. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get the win, but I scored a try, actually, which was something that hasn't happened in a long time. But it was brilliant, and I completely loved the experience. Now, in saying that, I don't have any regrets about doing it any sooner in my career. I was very lucky to have been part of some really successful teams with Leinster. We were winning Heineken Cups, we were winning leagues, and I never put a price on winning trophies and medals. For me, that was always the most important thing. And while I love my time in Perth, I'm also really glad that I didn't move clubs from Leinster earlier in my career.
No, I think, as you said, you wouldn't have had an inkling of that you wanted to move because of the success you were having, at Leinster, and the impact you were having there as well. Playing for Ireland and and going on tours with the British and Irish Lions. You've achieved a lot, so you probably didn't have to think about that that time of moving. And I suppose you get asked this a lot too. What's the differences between your time in Europe and obviously the Super Rugby?
What are the main differences? I think defensively, there's definitely not the same amount of work and preparation on the game week put into defense. Super Rugby is very much applauded for the attack and the amazing skill set that's always on show, and that was something I wasn't surprised by. The dry ball and the good conditions was something that I completely loved. Yourself, and been from New Zealand, you would have had a lot of experiences of playing rugby on wet nights when the ball is wet, and it's just harder to play the game. So it was a real breath of fresh air, knowing every night that it was going to be a dry ball and 25, 26 degrees. I probably would have had it around the European level in terms of the standard. I would have likened with European level as opposed to the Celtic League or the British Premiership. And the physicality was something that was just a little notch higher. You're playing against teams who are a lot more powerful and explosive.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that about the lack of time defensive coaches get in the weekly schedules. As a defensive coach, we're always asking for more time, but attack, everyone wants to talk about attack. Everyone wants to train attack. So, we used to do well with our 8 minutes that we get.
It's crazy. Whereas in the Northern Hemisphere, you'll find most teams will spend 50% of their week in defensive sessions. Oh. And that was without the biggest difference that I felt between Northern and Southern Hemisphere rugby.
Geez, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I got 50% of the time at training.
Oh, you'd find ways.
It was obviously, when this goes to air, there's a big game coming up this weekend against the All Blacks. So, can you talk us through just playing the All Blacks? I was there, as I said before, in the US when Ireland had their first win. And I think we had to leave early. I was with the Māori All Blacks at that stage, and we had to get on a flight to come to Europe. So we just had to leave just before the end. But I think it was a sad walk to our bus, and our bus was a long way away to get to. Can you just talk around that? I know, obviously being the first one, that was a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah, it was a huge accomplishment, and it will certainly go down as the top 3 best sporting moments in my life. And there was no trophy at the end of it. You don't get a medal at the end of it, but it was still top 3, and that's, I suppose, it's a huge sign of respect to New Zealand people in terms of how high esteem that we would all hold it in. Playing the All Blacks it's unbelievably special. It's nerve-wracking because you know that sometimes, no matter how well prepared you have done during the week, how ready you feel for the game, you know that if you're even just 1% off, that you can have 40 or 50 points put on you. And I was there for that famous day when we lost 60 points to 0 in New Zealand, and that was probably the most embarrassing day of my career. I played the All Blacks, I think maybe 10 or 11 times, and it was always something that I desperately wanted to do, was to be on the first Irish team to beat the All Blacks. And I know that the guys on the All Black team who played that day, some of them will be remembered as the first people on the All Blacks team to have lost to Ireland. But it was a huge day for Irish rugby. It was something that really needed to happen for us to get respect from the All Blacks. And I don't say that in any sort of negative sort of way, but I always felt that the All Blacks as a rugby team, as a rugby nation, you don't truly get their full respect until you've actually beat them in a game of rugby.
I hear you there. In terms of, in my time playing, it was always a fear. Yeah, I played with a lot of fear of losing. You know, being on that first team that lost to Ireland. I've been close a couple of times, and it just, you know, we don't like to obviously play with fear, you know, and it was something that I always didn't want to be a part of, because of those that had been before who hadn't, you know, who had kept that going. So, you know, I know it was tough for a lot of those players that were part of that. Yet, in the bigger scheme of things, you know, you understand with the rise of Irish rugby, you know, it's great to keep our game competitive, in my view. And so, you know, this weekend, what would you be saying to, you know, the Irish team? What can they take from, you know, that experience that you've had in beating the All Blacks?
Well, I think the biggest thing that they can take from is that it's been done before. And, you know, I sat in so many press conferences the week of games that we played the All Blacks, and you'd sit there and you'd say, you know, we feel that on our best day, if we have our very best performance, we can beat the All Blacks. But you never really truly believe that until you've actually done it. And I think it was so important that we did that for all the future generations of teams that plays the All Blacks, that they know that the history books say that an Irish team has beaten the All Blacks, not just once, but twice. And I suppose I get a lot more satisfaction from the second time that we won, because I always sort of felt a little bit that the first time in Chicago, you know, you're not in holiday mode, but you know, it's this exhibition game. It's in a country that's neutral. The Cubs had just won the World Series at the time, so the city was going a little bit crazy. And I remember watching photos and videos of some of the All Blacks players. They were out in the parades, getting involved, and sort of thinking, you know, maybe they've just taken their eye off the ball a fraction for this weekend. And for the second time that we won that game, it was 1v2 in the world. That's where the rankings was at the time, and this was the big game that was been billed as winner of this game will be best team in the world at this moment in time. So I thought for the second one, the All Blacks were really aware of what the Irish team could do and what they could achieve. And they were very focused that week, and they didn't have the distraction of being in a different city like Chicago. And that's why I think that second win for me personally stands head and shoulders above the first one in Chicago.
Well, you've definitely paved the way for future generations, and should be a good game coming up this weekend. Now, just sorry on that, I'm a MMA fan, and I saw you added Conor McGregor's become a bit of a part of Irish rugby, how would I say, promotions. Have you met the guy, and how did that go down?
You know what? I've not met him. Very few of the guys on the rugby team have met him. And it's only recently in the last few months that I've started seeing post photos of him in the national rugby jersey. He's a very patriotic person. He's really, you know, Irish through and through. Now he's wearing soccer jerseys, he's wearing Manchester United jerseys, he's got a different jersey on every single day. So he is the king of promotion. And I suppose it's only good for Irish rugby jersey sales that he's seen working out in the gym wearing his Irish top.
Yeah, I saw that. Oh, jeez. Have you tasted his whiskey?
I have tasted it once. He reckons it's the very best whiskey in the world. I'm not quite sure I can agree with that. I've had some whiskeys that are a little bit better, but again, in terms of his ability to be able to market that and turn it into the business that he has done has been pretty impressive.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably good for us to get into business, because I see you're very busy in that space as well. You've got a recruitment company, Mason Alexander, and I think when I thought about starting this podcast, Rob, I thought back to when we met in 2018, I think it was, and I was sitting in your offices with Dave McHugh in his little office that was inside your offices. And he was telling me, this is Rob Kearney's, this is his business. I looked around and you had plenty of staff. He's still playing. How's he got this started up? And so, like I said, when I started, the thought behind this podcast and me learning because I've got into big business as well, very slowly, I just really thought, I want to talk to him, because I was really impressed. You came in and like I said, I saw the offices, and then when we met at Dave's house, and we had a little chat there, you're a top man. And I just thought I'd want to talk to you about it, and how you got started, with business.
Yeah, I suppose I really have my mum to thank initially. I come from a rugby family. My dad, my grandfather were very keen on rugby. But I suppose my mother was always the one in the house who would make sure that academics were something that we always pursued. I joined the Leinster Academy when I was 18, straight out of school. But she was insistent that I do my degree at the same time, which was challenging, but it was manageable. So I did a degree in economics. It took me 4 years. And then when I was 23, I got a serious knee injury, a microfracture that was going to keep me out for a year. So I knew at that moment in time that I needed to do something else, and I finished my degree. So the next thing after that was to do an MBA in business. So I did it part-time for 2 years. And then I was 25 years of age with my degree, with my MBA in business. And I thought, okay, it's time to start putting these things into practice now. And like you say, I'm involved in 4 or 5 different businesses, all on different sort of levels. Some of them are either co-founded a company. Some of them might just be investments in them. But I was always sort of very keen to have a dual career and to try and learn as much as I could while I was still playing, to try and ensure that transition out of the game became a little bit easier. Now, I'm in that transition at the moment, and it's still difficult. It's challenging. You're apprehensive about the future and what the future holds. And one day you wake up and you think, yeah, that's something I'd like to explore. And then the next day you're going down a completely different avenue. But I suppose I wanted to make sure that when the time I did come to retire, that I had some sort of insight into how the business world works, that I would have a few different areas or different sectors that I knew might interest me, and try and find out as well what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. But it's definitely going to be a learning curve. You come out of one job, one professional where you're best in class. That because we're all professional, it means we're somewhat experts at the game. And then you go into this new life where you're right down at the very bottom, trying to recreate that identity for yourself. You're trying to reestablish yourself in a new walk of life. But I keep having to tell myself that I got to be patient too. That all of these things aren't just going to happen overnight, and it could take 3 to 5 years before, certainly for me, before I become fully comfortable in what that next phase and chapter of my life entails.
You talked about when you're right at the start, you decided to go into economics. did you have an interest in that, coming out of school? I've got teenage children, and when you talk to young players that are, everything is focused on rugby, is sport, trying to convince them that, you can do both. You can, tap away at a degree at the same time, or keep an interest in something is sometimes difficult. So I was just wondering around that, the importance of, what you went into when you left school, that degree. What got you into economics?
I suppose it was just, it was a general business degree for the first 2 years. And then I was studying economics as a part of that business degree. And that was the one subject that I liked most. So for the third year, I got the opportunity just to specialize in that. So I did. And I suppose regarding your first point about how it's, young kids coming up and they just think sport. For me, I found it really beneficial to have two things going on in my life. And I actually, I can genuinely say that I feel that my rugby career was better. I was able to apply myself even better to it because it wasn't just always rugby 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that I had an outlet to remove myself away from. If rugby wasn't going well, or if I was injured, well, then there was another very tangible thing that I could apply some work ethic and some emotion to, because you can very much get caught up in sport too much. And it's important for your development as a person and as a player to realize that this little bubble that we're in at this moment in time, it's not the be all and end all. And I find just going into college on a daily basis now, there's a lot of lectures and things that I miss, but it just gave me a rounder insight into life and the way the world works. I don't think it would have been healthy for me to come straight out of boarding school at 18, go straight into professional rugby for 15 years and just be in that bubble. And then coming out the other end at 35 years of age and thinking, hold on, I've never really had any sort of experience of what, life outside of rugby is.
So when you went into your decision to go into business, did you have, some advisors, or do you have mentors that helped you, go into that space?
Yeah, I'd always have had lots of mentors. One of the things that we're really lucky with as rugby players and as sports people is we've got really good networks around us and people we can tap into. There's so many people there who want to help us out, who want to see us try and succeed off the rugby field. And to guys who are still playing, I'd always encourage them to reach out to as many people as they can and to make use of their profile now while they still have it. Because when you retire and 3 years passes, 4 years passes, that phone call isn't as valuable as it was in the midst of your career when you were a name and someone who people wanted to talk to. And I think that's something that is important to guys who are still playing. They think, oh, well, I can worry about all of that when I'm retired. And no, you can do it now. It's very easy to do both of them when you're still playing and to build up that network of people who you can lean on, whether you're still playing or when the time comes to finish up.
I'm learning a lot around networks. As, you mentioned there, when you finish the game and you realize actually all those people I met, it's been a long time since we've actually I've been in touch. So listening to you there encourage our people within sport right now, because I've mentioned before that sports people or rugby people in our sense, they want to help. They just want to see, as you said, they want to see us succeed. Yet sometimes you've got to get out of the corners of the rooms to actually, get that handshake or introduce yourself, which is, again, sometimes players aren't comfortable, or they just don't want to do that.
Exactly. You've taken the words out of my mouth, that sometimes it is uncomfortable to put yourself out there like that, and you're outside your natural habitat of a gym or a rugby field, and you're in a room with people who are dressed up in suits and who are talking about business, and you think, oh, well, I'm going to be lost in this conversation, or I'm going to say something that people are going to think is really stupid and I don't know what I'm talking about. But that's okay too, because, like you say, people just want to help. They understand that maybe not everyone has an unbelievably good understanding of the business world, and they don't necessarily expect us to be able to talk and articulate on the same level as they are. But taking that first step is often the hardest, but the most important too.
I think you've also just reminds me, some of the players that I played with then, who didn't say, 2 or 3 words, or wouldn't string together 3 sentences, are now commentators who I just sit back and amazed. So he's saying more than he ever said to me in our 10 years we played together. So like, as you said, those skills are learned, and they're learned through, our sport. You can learn all these things to get that confidence through the sport that you're playing, through the people that are willing to help you. And again, as you said, if you just put yourself out there a little bit and get uncomfortable.
Exactly. The sports people, I think we can be quite self-depreciating sometimes, and we definitely don't give ourselves enough credit in terms of the softer skills that we've developed in life. You go into any high performance rugby team and you take 95% of those players, their timekeeping is impeccable, their ability to be resilient, to deal with setbacks, to find a challenge and really strive and go for it, and their teamwork, their discipline, all of these things that as rugby players that we take for granted, they're very hard to find in the corporate world. And that's something that I'm seeing more and more as I become exposed to some of these companies that are out there. All those skills that we take for granted, and we just think, well, they're just our standards and our values, and that's how we live our daily lives. That's not necessarily how everybody else in the corporate world lives their lives. So I think we definitely have a huge amount of skills that we can offer.
On that, what are the main skills that you've been able to transition from rugby to business?
Oh, mate, I'm still trying to find my way. I'm still learning this. It's probably those ones that I've mentioned. I think, when sports people say they're going to do something, generally they do it. They try and find a way to do it. They might have setbacks, but we're really good at overcoming setbacks. We're resilient people because we've had to be, through injury, through selection. You play a shit game for your country, and you're given a 2 out of 10 in the national newspapers the next day. So that makes us strong, mentally strong. And I think every time that sports people overcome those obstacles, they add another layer of resilience to themselves. And by the time you go through your career, you become a really resilient person. And resilience is something that's really important, not just in sport, but in business and in life too.
So I've got what area of business have you had that really stumped you? You got into it, and you're probably going to say there's a few. Yet, when you've been in business, what is some of the how am I trying to say this? What are some of the walls that you've come up against that you've found hard to climb over?
I think the financials of a business are always something that are difficult. I never really did accountancy at school. I didn't do any accountancy at college. But anytime you're a part of a business now, or you're running a business, you've got P&L balance sheets, you've got pages this thick at the end of the year that account and document every number going, and you've got EBITDAs, and you've got revenues and profits before tax and profits after tax and depreciation. It's that's probably been the one area that I've struggled. I was never particularly good at maths at school. So trying to understand the financials of the business has been a difficult aspect. Particularly in Ireland at the moment, these tech companies are completely taking over. They're taking over the world in some respects. And I wish someone told me 20 years ago, just sit by your computer and learn how to code, and life after rugby will be okay. But you look at some of these companies like Stripe and cryptocurrency at the moment, and I just haven't I've got no clue about it, and I've tried to educate myself on it, but I get stuck at blockchain, and that's as far as I seem to get. But it doesn't really interest me, and I think it's important that you always pursue businesses that you're interested, as opposed to businesses that are going to make you wealthy.
You've got a finger in a few other businesses as well. So we talked about Mason Alexander, your recruitment business, and in those since then, you've got a few pubs with your brother and some mates. How's that going for you?
The pubs are great. I think pubs are sexy, aren't they? From my early 20s, the notion of owning a pub was something I always thought was really cool. And we're very lucky to have a really nice pub that is smack bang in the middle between the National Stadium and where Leinster play the rugby matches. So anytime there's a concert or a sports event on, that's generally the go-to spot. I'm involved in a snacking company, in a beautician's, in an online fitness platform in the UK. But the biggest thing for me is backing smart people and surrounding yourself with really smart people. And to take the beauticians, for example. It's where women go in and get their nails done, they get their waxing done, they get their blow dries. It's a business that I never thought I'd be involved in. But the guy who set it up is a friend of mine, and he's one of the smartest, sharpest, most entrepreneurial people that I've ever met. And we were talking maybe 6-7 years ago. I said, if you're ever opening up anything, I'd love to know. I'd love to be involved in it. He could have opened up a food pet store, and I would have got involved in it, because I think the most important thing that you can do is surround yourself with really smart people who you can learn things from. It's the same with the pubs. The majority shareholder we're in with is a guy called Noel Anderson, and he's been a publican since he was 17 or 18 years of age. So it's in his blood. And when you're going into these different sectors, you've got to make sure you're involved with people who understand the sector inside out.
Listening to all those, how's COVID affected your businesses, and how have you been able to react to that and adapt?
Yeah, COVID smashed them all. We've been somewhat lucky in this country that the government support for our employees has been pretty good. and there's been good subsidies there. The two pubs were closed down for over a year at one stage, which was really difficult. The recruitment company, we had to let people go. And in all of the businesses, you have to lay people off, which was a really difficult thing to do at the time. And it was horrible. You know, the country is still recovering. We're going to be recovering from it for a long time. But you just got to get on with it, don't you? It is what it is, and you've just got to make sure that you're fighting as best you can to come out the other side, and ensuring that you still have a business model that works, but also making sure that you're trying to protect and help as much of your employees as you can. And it's tough to find the balance between that sometimes.
How's the COVID situation over there at the moment? You know, because over here we're in lockdown at the moment. Well, Auckland's in lockdown.
Yeah, we're just on the way out of it. So Ireland's been through the ringer for the last couple of years. The 22nd of October was always sort of pitched as Ireland's Freedom Day. We've got over 90% of the population vaccinated, and kids are starting to get it now too. So I think they're confident that hospital ICU beds are not going to be overcapacitated. And that was always the biggest concern, that we saw those horrific images from Italy and parts of France and the UK, where, you know, people were either couldn't get a ventilator, or they were on a ventilator outside in the car park of a hotel, or sorry, of a hospital. And they were the really distressing images that every country wanted to avoid. So we've been through the pain, and we've suffered as a country severely in terms of lives that have been lost and businesses that have been shut down. I don't think we've fully seen the effects of mental health issues that this is going to cause a lot of people over the next, 18 months to 3-5 years. But we are at the end of the tunnel, where we're starting to see a little bit more light now, and the economy's back up and running, and businesses are starting to reopen again. So, we're over the worst of it. We're not out the gap just yet, as they say, but times are looking a little brighter.
Yeah, no, as I said before, we're in lockdown still, level 3 in Auckland, whereas primarily the rest of the country's running at level 2, which is a bit better for businesses. Yet, I think, as you said, it's tough for businesses at this stage. My wife and I, we walk around here. You can get a cup of coffee or things, but you can't go into stores and things like that. But all the empty or the closed stores, or the spaces there, now in that space as a business owner, you just feel so sorry for those people and those that can't open. And we're probably getting close to what you guys are, that 90% vaccinations. That's what we're aiming for as well. And hopefully that'll be done in the next couple of weeks for those people who are struggling with putting out everything into their businesses, and hopefully, that can't do anything about it. Like you say, you just got to adapt and adjust, your model. But it is a sad time. It is a sad time as a business owner, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is really sad, and you just hope that they have the strength and the support, from the government too, to be able to come out the other end.
You mentioned your startup and snack farm, which is some snacks. Obviously, being in the health and well-being supplement business, we're about that healthy lifestyle as well. So again, I know you talked about you invest with your people as the way you pick your investments. What's your take on that the healthy lifestyle sector at the moment? Is that the way to go?
Yeah, it's absolutely the way to go. And first for me, it was always investing in the people, and secondly, it was investing in companies or brands that I suppose align to my own values as a person, and brands that I think would help the greater good. And wellness, healthy snacking, taking care of our minds and body is something that we're only scratching the surface of, I think, as humans, in terms of what food we put into our body, the mental work that we do as people, getting into mindfulness, meditation, all of this sort of stuff. We're still only scratching the surface of it, I believe, and I think it has been a huge help to people in COVID who've been at home, locked in their homes. Their ability to be able to be at peace with themselves and at peace with the situation they're in is something that has definitely gotten people through some tough days over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, you're right. That healthy lifestyle you're talking about, especially in these current times, and I can see you're keeping yourself healthy. You haven't. I don't know, you're only just newly retired, but you haven't put on that 10 kg retirement. Have you?
I tell you what, I'm not officially retired for another month. I'm playing for the Barbarians in Twickenham on the 27th of November.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I thought, well, to cut it short, I've lost about 4 kilos of muscle. I definitely haven't gone the other way. So I need to put some weight on quickly because those Samoans will snap me in half.
Oh, well, at least you're going the other way, but you're right. I remember when Dan Carter, he came in and he hadn't, those genes that you two have got is totally different from us Islanders, where you were going, he came in and he said, I haven't been doing anything. And like, I think as you've said, he'd lost 4 or 5 kg just because he wasn't working, in the gym or, on that schedule that rugby players are on. So he was, obviously trying to double trainings in the gym, then come out and run. And it took us a while to get the few hip pad sessions and tackle sessions to get the body right. But I think, as you said, around the other side of that too, when I retired, I went to France and I had baguettes morning, noon and night. I think that was my biggest I'd ever been. About 3 months later, my wife talked to me. I said, I think you better slow down on the baguettes. I said, what are you talking about? She says, have you looked at yourself or weighed yourself lately? And I was a bit taken aback. So I went into the gym and weighed myself, and I'd put on 10 kg in 3 months. You
just from baguettes. So that's what I need to do for the next month before that Barbarians game. Just eat baguettes.
Ham, egg and cheese baguettes. That's what I was eating for. I love them. 2 a day, 2 for lunch, 1 for dinner, before dinner, a snack. I would suggest if you wanted to put on weight pretty quick, but yeah, watch out for that, because I think that's, like you say, with that health and well-being side of it for footy players as well. Just keeping an eye that, we can't keep doing the same thing. If we're going to we can't eat the same if we're not going to train the same.
No,
and that's
exactly.
something that taught me.
Yeah, and I think we sort of, you learn to understand your body the older you get, and know the things that agree with you and don't agree with you. I was someone who never really had a massive appetite, so even now I can, would only really have 2 meals a day. But in the health and wellness space, sleep was always the biggest thing for me. It was always the most important part of my life that I was getting minimum 8 hours sleep every night of the week. And even to this day, I will always say that you can recover, you can do as many ice baths or as much massage, deep tissue, anything. There is nothing that replicates a good 8-hour kip.
No, 100%. And I take my hat off to you for getting that.
Now, I must say I've been lucky. I don't have any kids just yet. So I know that once they come down the line, I will be throwing the 8 hours out the window and dividing it by 2.
Well, you've done it right by waiting till after your rugby career to miss out on sleep. But no, I think like you say, in health and well-being. So, in terms of you've got the 8-hour sleep. What's your routine to keep your life balanced and looking after yourself, your own health and well-being?
Yeah, I suppose that at this moment in time, I'm really enjoying playing team games, or like you said, I've gone back to play a little bit of Gaelic football. For some of your listeners, it's our national sport. It's a little bit like Aussie rules with a round ball. The pitch isn't as big, but it's a national sport in this country. So I played loads of it growing up as a kid. But I've just really enjoyed playing squash with my mates, playing a bit of paddle tennis and five-a-side soccer, all of those things that I could never do when I was playing rugby. I find it really difficult to wake up in the morning, throw on a pair of runners and run around the road for 5 or 10K. I can't do it. I feel so sore after it, and I don't particularly enjoy it. So I'm still trying to find the activities, the sports that give me most enjoyment. And the things that I love are, 60 minutes or 90 minutes of exercise, where at the end, you've got a winner, you've got a loser, you've got a bit of slagging with your mates, I'll get you next time, or you were terrible tonight. And just those little things that I wasn't able to do when I was playing rugby.
All right. What advice would you give our listeners, if they are thinking of chasing, firstly, the sports dream?
Chasing the sports dream, it's a lot harder in your country to chase the sports dream, because everybody wants to be an All Black, and you've got so many incredibly talented players. Your application to the game has always got to be top of the tree. There's nothing that will ever replace work ethic. You've got to be a good person. You've got to be a good teammate, because if your own personal values don't align with the team values, you'll never fit into a group. Your fellow players won't accept you, and the coaches will never pick you. If I could give myself some advice, if I was talking to 23-year-old me, I would say manage your body an awful lot better. It is your single biggest asset. So take really good care of it. Understand the types of training that makes you feel better, and avoid the types of training that doesn't make you feel better. It probably took me till I was 27 or 28 before I really understood the game of rugby. I knew about my position as a fullback quite early on. But I think you'll become a much more rounded person if you have a really good understanding of the game and why you're trying to implement a different game plan on a different week. I think sometimes we can be just a little bit too focused on doing my job, understanding my role. Whereas if you understand the team role and some of the players around you, it just gives you a little bit better understanding. And it means that on those tough days or those tough matches that you can be a leader, and you can adapt to what you're seeing in front of you a little bit better.
game sense. We talk a lot around coaching over here around developing the game sense. And like you say, it takes time. It's, just like another subject in school where the more you do it, the more experience you have, the better you get at it. And sometimes it takes younger players to realize there's more to learn in the game, than just running, passing, tackling. There's the tactical side that you talk about.
Exactly, and the mental side as well.
Yes, 100%.
We spend so much time in the gym getting bigger, getting stronger. And it was Joe Schmidt, who is someone who had a massive impact on my career. He was always someone who was so dead set on the mind gym, and he would make sure that every single player was getting into the mind gym every single day, whether it's visualizing and running through your role on a specific power play. He just made sure that we were always taking 5-10 minutes a day where you're lying in your bed or sitting in your chair, just doing visualization and firing those neural pathways. And it's something that he was probably quite ahead of his time. And it's something that made a massive difference to me and to the Irish rugby team.
Yeah, well, Joe had a big part to play with your successes with Ireland and Leinster, obviously. And such a nice man. When you talk about good people, I've met him a couple of times, and it's funny, when I meet him, he's such a top man and so nice. And then when you hear how he is at training, they say he's a bit mean. He's a bit different.
There's definitely two sides to him. But I suppose, what I loved so much about working for Joe was that he made everything really clear for you. He would highlight to the nth degree exactly what he wanted from you. And if you did exactly what he wanted, there was never any issues or any problems. But if you didn't do it, it was generally because of a lack of application or concentration. And that's when he would get annoyed or fired up with players, because he knew what he expected from us was something that we could all do. They were, more often than not, sometimes they were skill execution things, but they were effort areas as well. And if someone just wasn't trying hard enough, that's when he would let you have it. And that's part of the thing that made us so successful under his time.
Yeah, that standards and that attention to detail is what they talk a lot about with the great coaches, isn't it? I know Wayne Smith was another one who was very similar. It was the detail in your lack of application and effort that he'd jump on, because he knew what you were capable of, even though you didn't know yourself that you could do it. He had so much faith in terms of your ability and potential, and he just wanted you to succeed. And listening to people talk about Joe, it's very much the same. And I suppose that's why everyone talks and holds them in such high regard as coaches.
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely with Joe, it was that attention to detail was incredible. You're running a running line in a backs power play. You're running at a 45-degree angle. He'll change that to a 30-degree angle. And he'll tell you once. He'll show you how to do it, and then there's just an expectation that that's how you do it from that moment on. And that's why I always really, really liked playing for him, because I knew if I delivered exactly what he wanted, well, then there was a very good chance that you were going to get picked in the team the following week.
Yeah, that's right. There's no grey area. You know where you stand, and that's what you aim for every training.
Exactly.
Just also, I'd ask you your advice now for athletes that have started their pro sports. So they've started their pro careers, or in the middle of their pro careers, because we've got a mate of mine that's playing for Ireland at the moment that Bundy key that, I think I'd like him to make sure that he's, taking some advice on from people like yourself, to take advantage of the opportunity that he's and the sacrifices he's made, to get across, obviously, and do what the opportunities that Ireland and Connacht have given him over there. So, about life after sport, and, what advice would you give those players now?
Yeah, I think life after sport, and we've touched on it earlier a little bit. It's scary. You're creating this new identity for yourself. I think something that we as sports people have been blessed with, that we've got such a clear purpose every single day of the week, that when we were playing rugby, we'd bounce out of bed every single day to try and get better at rugby, to try and get a little bit stronger in the gym, to try and get a little bit better at passing off your weak side or kicking with your weak foot. And there was always a skill to try and get better at. And I know for me, trying to find that purpose and try and find that passion in the next phase of my life is going to be the challenging piece. But I'm very confident that once I find what that purpose is, I'll be able to apply all of those skills that I've learned over the years to ensure that I achieve at that. What I would say is, don't wait until you're coming towards the end of your career to start thinking about these things. Do it now, do it early, because like I said earlier on, I think having that dual career was something that definitely helped my rugby, and playing rugby was something that definitely helped my businesses. We as sports people have a lot of downtime, that we can either sit at home on our couch playing PlayStation or scrolling through social media, or we can make use of that time to upskill ourselves as people and upskill ourselves in a way away from the rugby field. And that doesn't necessarily have to be into business. It can be going into a trade, or there's lots of different things that we can all try and be good at. But my advice would be to start it sooner rather than later, because it feels like only yesterday I was a 19-year-old kid coming straight out of school, and I'm sure you probably agree that time goes like that, in a blink of an eye, in a blink of an eye, and there's no time like the present to start attacking these things and taking that first step.
No, that's exactly right. Time goes quick, and if you don't take those opportunities while they're sitting in front of you, you kind of have those regrets, or you miss them. So, Rob, what are you doing with rugby now? Are you still involved in terms of, sorry, I know you've got a game coming up. I mean, in terms of, in the retired life, what's your involvement with rugby going to be?
I'm doing a little bit of punditry at the moment. I suppose probably because it's a little bit of an easy option for me at the moment. I love the game, and I still want to be very much a part of it. I do like coaching, but it's a real vocation, and it is 7 days a week. As players, you play a game on a Friday night and you can chill out Saturday and Sunday. As a coach, you're reviewing the game on a Saturday and you're previewing the opposition on a Sunday, and you will know this hell of a lot better than I will. And I suppose I'm looking forward to having weekends back. I think as a coach, it's difficult, and you've got to really be prepared to put your life and your soul into the game. And for me at this moment in my life, I just want to explore other areas into the future.
Okay, last question. What's going to happen this weekend, Ireland versus the All Blacks?
Oh man, it's going to be a tough one for us Irish boys. I think one thing that is going to come against us this weekend is that we haven't experienced playing a Southern Hemisphere team in 2 years, and that's a long time. And we've got a lot of new people who've come into the team who have never played a Southern Hemisphere team at all, and there's it's a different level to a Six Nations game. Obviously, you boys have had a rugby championship. You've played a lot of games together. You've been in camp a lot of time, and your game is in a really good place. So I think it's going to be difficult for Ireland. I would love to say that Ireland are going to win, but I think it's going to be a pretty challenging day out for us.
Oh well, Rob, appreciate your time. Appreciate you taking my messages and calls to come on board, and I've learned a lot. And it's probably why I wanted you on the podcast. So thank you very much, brother, and hopefully you keep well.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure for me to be on the podcast too. So thank you, Kia ora.
You take care, bro.
Cheers, buddy.
Ooh, I better stop this.